Monsters come and monsters go. But tonight, my friends, I have a tale of one who's always here, or at least never far away. His biggest trick in this world is to make us all believe there's only one of him. Welcome to Billoween 2019. Hey guys, Bill here. Our story for this Billoween is a scary little tale. It's not necessarily real, but on the other hand, it's not totally fake either. What I can tell you is it's all new, original, and never heard before. It was written by yours truly, and I like to call it The Devil's Playground. This is a story that is better listened to than watched, so do me a favor. Turn down the lights, close your eyes just a little, and listen to this. Jimmy Matthews and some of his friends from the Johnson City Middle School are enjoying a sunny fall recess from classes playing a little basketball. Robbie da Silva, a young boy from a Brazilian family, passes the ball to Jimmy. Jimmy dribbles up to the hoop and shoots, but misses the backboard altogether. Jimmy runs to fetch the ball, but is picked up by an older, hulking kid named Bruno. Jimmy stops in his tracks when this happens and just puts his hands out towards Bruno. "Right here," Jimmy says, as friendly as possible. "Just pass it back to me." Bruno doesn't throw the ball back. Instead, he gets an evil grin on his face. "I'd throw it back, but you're such a weakling it would probably knock you down." Jimmy's hands slowly drop. This isn't his first encounter with this bully. He turns back to his other friends to see if they're looking. Bruno laughs. "Don't look at them, Powder Puff. They aren't going to do anything. You come over here and get the ball from me." Jimmy stares at Bruno for a moment, not sure what to do. "Too scared to come and get it?" Bruno says with another laugh. "Come on, you chicken." Jimmy gathers his courage and moves forward. He puts his hands out again and tries to look as confident as possible. "Can you please just give me the ball? I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Bruno laughs. "What kind of trouble? Do you mean trouble like this?" Bruno raises the ball up and brings it down on Jimmy's head without letting go. Jimmy grabs his head in pain, but Bruno isn't about to stop. He says, "Or do you mean this kind of trouble?" Bruno then slams the ball into Jimmy's stomach so hard it knocks him down. Jimmy grabs at his stomach and cries out in pain. It isn't something he can get up from right away. Bruno then throws the ball at Jimmy and walks off with a snort. "What a baby! What are you even doing in school? You should be at home hiding behind your mama's skirt." After school, Jimmy and his friend Robbie sit at the back of the school bus. Jimmy is silent, obviously troubled by his encounter with Bruno. Robbie has tried numerous times to cheer Jimmy up, but nothing's worked. "We have to do something about this guy," Robbie says almost to himself. "I mean, this is like the 5th time he bullied you." Jimmy looks over at Robbie with a sad face. "Yeah, but what?" he says. "Reporting him didn't do anything. When my mom called his mom, it just made things worse. I mean, he's like a curse to me." After listening to this, Robbie suddenly gets a funny look on his face. He says, "Hey, you know what? I think I have an idea." "What kind of idea?" Jimmy replies without much hope in his voice. Robbie's face brightens even more. Listen, instead of this guy being a curse to you, why don't we put a curse on him?" Jimmy looks confused. "What are you talking about?" Robbie leans in, speaking more quietly, not wanting the other kids to hear. "You remember my Aunt Marcia, the one who came to live at my house for a while?" "Oh, you mean that lady from Brazil?" "Yeah. She was having some kind of problem with somebody and went to see a witch doctor." Jimmy becomes suspicious immediately. "A witch doctor?" Well, not exactly. They have a different name for them, but it's like a witch doctor. It's this woman who can help you remove curses from people who put curses on you, or if you want, you can put curses on other people. We could go see her. I know where she lives. Jimmy thinks about it for a minute. He then says, I don't know. It sounds kind of creepy. Robbie shrugs, maybe, but on the other hand, it's got to be better than getting pounded by Bruno every day. Jimmy looks back at his friend, studies him for a minute, and considers the logic of it all. We're going to take a break from our story for just a minute because I'd like to show you guys a real or fake submission that came in from Jacob Lukens this week. Jacob sent a picture that he himself took at an old log church in Pennsylvania. Jacob said if we look carefully at the bottom right side of the church very closely, we can see some sort of apparition there. Maybe a ghost or some kind of animal spirit. Jacob, yes, I can see this outline here, but I have to be honest with you. To me, it looks like just another case of pareidolia, that thing where our mind creates shapes we recognize when there's actually nothing there. But then again, that is a very odd shape there. I think for right now, what I'm going to do is just leave this one as unknown. Okay, so now let's get back to our story. So far, we know that Jimmy has a big bully problem at school, and his friend Robbie is suggesting he goes to see a witch doctor for help. Jimmy isn't quite sure whether this is a very good idea, but on the other hand, wonders if it might be worth a try. The witch doctor sits behind her table with an amused look on her face. She says, "Did you bring the picture I asked you for and the folded up piece of paper with the bully's name on it? And, oh, by the way, what about the money?" Jimmy and Robbie sit nervously on the other side of the table. Jimmy is holding the items tightly, including all the money from his piggy bank. He pushes it all towards a strange-looking lady on the other side. Her name is Zulady, and she's not a very big woman. In fact, she's kind of small. She lives in a small house down by the river near the edge of town. You wouldn't know that she's a witch doctor from the looks of her house, but once inside her consultation room, you realize just what a spooky place it is. The room is dark and filled with some scary-looking statues. Zulady takes the items from Jimmy and studies them carefully as the boys look around the room. "What are all these statues?" Jimmy says nervously. Zulady doesn't look up, but answers matter-of-factly. "Those represent the spirits who we will ask to help you." "Oh," Jimmy responds, not really wanting to know more. Zulady smiles at his apprehension, then says, "The way it works here is very different from what you would normally think. Here we don't ask a god for help. Instead, we ask the devil for a favor." Both the boys are shocked by this news. Jimmy gets a scared look on his face. He's about to ask for his things back and forget the whole thing, but Zulady moves to calm him down. "Don't worry, little one," she says. "We're not dealing with Satan himself, but rather, how do I say this? Some of his, maybe what we could call co-workers. You don't have anything to worry about, but this guy, the Bruno boy who's been bullying you, he will get the lesson of his life and never bother you again, guaranteed." Reluctantly, the boys go along with Zulady. She takes them into another room and disappears for a few minutes. Jimmy turns to Robbie angrily. "Why didn't you tell me this was a devil thing? My parents are going to kill me if they find out about this." Robbie seems a little embarrassed. "I didn't know that's how it works. All I know is my aunt seemed to be a lot happier when she came here." Jimmy eyes the door to the outside and thinks about making a run for it, But before he can make up his mind, Zulady comes back into the room dressed in a strange white costume. She has a skinny young man with her, also dressed in white. "This is Palito," Zulady says. "He will be helping us today." Zulady walks out onto an open piece of floor near a small altar. Strange music starts to fill the air, and Zulady begins to sway to the rhythm. Jimmy and Robbie watch on, not sure what is going to happen, but regretting very much their decision to ever come here. Gradually, the music gets louder, and Zulady seems to go into a trance. And then, without warning, she begins to speak, but it isn't her voice. It's the voice of a man who does not seem to be very happy. "I am thirsty," the deep, scary voice bellows. "Bring me whiskey." The skinny man, Palito, moves quickly to get what the spirit is asking for. He produces a small flask of whiskey and hands it to Zulady. Zulady, or the spirit inside her, lifts the flask to her lips and takes a big draw of the fluid. A moment passes, and then Palito says, "Please, can you tell us who you are?" "It is I, Congacero. What do you want of me?" The assistant looks over at the boys and gives them a thumbs up as if they've gotten lucky with a good deity. Before the assistant can even turn back to Zulady, Congacero blurts out, "I want smoke! Give me smoke!" The assistant quickly finds some cigarettes and lights one and places it in Zulady's mouth. The look on her face softens. Congacero seems pleased. Without waiting for Congacero to respond again, the assistant speaks to the deity with the utmost respect. "These boys have come today to ask you of a small favor, Congacero." With the cigarette still dangling from her mouth, the possessed witch doctor walks over to the boys with a blank stare in her eyes. When she gets close, she stops and blows a big cloud of smoke in the boys' faces. "A favor? What kind of favor?" the deep male voice asks. "Is it a favor I will enjoy?" At this point, Jimmy can't take it any longer. He belts out a scream of fear and bolts from his position and runs for the door. Not wanting to be left alone, Robbie follows him and they race out of the building. Okay, so let's take another little break here and take a look at the next real or fake Halloween submission that came in just recently. This one comes to us from Uriel Acevedo and Oris Louis. They both want to know if this picture of the sun looking kind of like a jack-o'-lantern is for real or just some kind of BFF. Guys, I did a thorough check on this one, and guess what? It turns out that that picture is real. According to NASA, the picture was snapped by the Space Agency's Solar Dynamics Observatory satellite and shows the sun in ultraviolet light. NASA says the picture is 100% real. Its resemblance to a jack-o'-lantern is caused by active regions which appear brighter because they emit more light and energy. So there you have it. Now, in terms of our story, the last time we saw Jimmy and Robbie, they were making an early and rather dramatic exit from their visit to see the witch doctor. But the question now is the problem with Bruno the bully solved? Or is Jimmy in for some more torture? A few days later, Jimmy and Robbie are back at school and heading out for recess. Jimmy has the basketball and goes through the door first onto the covered patio. They head for the basketball court, keeping an eye out for Bruno, but suddenly get stopped by a school security guard. "Hold on a second, guys," the big bulky security guard says with a hand out to stop them. Jimmy holds Robbie back as they stop in front of the guard. Neither of them have seen this security guard before. He has a much more weathered face than the regular guards. He looks more like a pirate in a security uniform than anything else. "Are you Jimmy Matthews?" the guard asks. "Yes, sir," Jimmy says confidently. The guard turns to Jimmy's friend. "And you are Robbie De Silva?" Robbie confirms with an apprehensive nod of his head. The guard sizes the boys up for a moment, then asks, You asked for a favor? A favor? Jimmy responds innocently as he can. The guard frowns, then leans in closer to the boys as he says, I'm Cangacero. You asked for a favor. Both boys suddenly get the look of mortal fear on their faces. They glance back at each other, then back at the menacing guard. I'm sorry, sir, but this must be a mistake. We changed our minds and we left early, didn't we, Robbie? Uh-huh, Robbie nods with exaggeration. Cangacero frowns again, only this time with frustration. Boys, I've come a long way to do this favor, and I want to get it done fast so I can spend a little extra time doing some dastardly deeds before I have to go back. Cangacero reaches up and grabs a support beam holding up the roof above them. The metal pole suddenly becomes very hot and starts to smoke. You want me to do this to your whole school? That would solve the problem. Both boys see the smoke and hold up their hands. No, please, Mr. Cangacero, no, please, don't do that. Cangacero drops his hand, but the pole continues to smoke a bit. Okay, he says, give me that ball then. Jimmy hands over the ball and Cangacero looks around the schoolyard. He sees Bruno, then asks, is that the turd you're having a problem with? Bruno? Yes it is, Jimmy says. Cangacero smiles with fiendish delight. He then turns back to the boys and says, all right, I've thought about it. Here's the plan. Bruno is standing out in the middle of the field harassing a young girl and threatening to pull off her ponytail when suddenly the basketball comes from out of nowhere and hits him right in the head. Bruno grabs his head in pain and cries out, ow! What the? Well, who did that? When the pain subsides enough, he looks back towards the basketball court and sees Jimmy standing there with a strained look on his face. Cangacero and Robbie are not far behind. Sorry, Jimmy says with a quivering voice. Bruno's face quickly distorts into a ball of fury. Oh, you are dead meat, Matthews! Bruno charges at Jimmy, but just before he gets there, Cangacero yells out, stop right there, fat face! Bruno is stunned by the remark. He says, what did you just call me? Cangacero leans in even closer and says, fat face with pimples might be more appropriate for you, you little piece of doo-doo. Bruno isn't intimidated by the overpowering stare that Cangacero gives him. With a look of defiance, he says, I'm reporting you to the principal. You could do that, Cangacero says, as if bored. He grabs the ball away from Bruno and holds it between his rapidly heating hands. But if you did do that, I'd have to kill you and your family, burn your house to the ground, and eat your roasted pets. At this point, the basketball is beginning to smolder and melt. Bruno glances at his schoolmates, not sure what to think. Robbie nods his head quickly. He's not kidding. Bruno turns back to Jimmy. The two boys stare at each other for a moment, then Cangacero nudges Jimmy as if to remind him of their plan. Jimmy takes a deep breath and then says, you know what, you low-life idiot? I think we need to settle this once and for all. Okay then, right now, you little rat, Bruno responds. Bruno starts to go for Jimmy, but Cangacero stops him. Look, if you guys have a beef with each other, settle it on your own time. Not here, not on my playground. The boys stare at each other for a moment, then Jimmy says, Bruno, you know where the old water tower is over by the park? Bruno nods. Yeah, I know where it is. Meet me there tonight around 7. Bring whatever you want, chains, knives, guns. I don't care. I'm not afraid of you. Bruno laughs. You think I need any weapons to whoop your sorry face? Don't make me laugh. Okay, we're going to take one last little break because I have one more real or fake submission I want to show you guys. It's this picture of what claims to be a statue of Jason from the Friday the 13th movie series at the bottom of a Minnesota lake. The picture was sent in by Holy Gamer 2.0, who just asked, is this picture for real? Gamer, thanks to an underwater video from diver Curtis Lair, I can confirm to you that the statue of Jason is really down there. In other words, it's real. We don't know who made this statue, but we do know it was placed at the bottom of the Louise mine pit in Crosby, Minnesota, somewhere around 2013. Curtis said he found it at a depth of 110 feet or 33 meters. It was very dark and the water temperature was only 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Not exactly something you can reach unless you're a very experienced diver, so don't even try. Now, as scary as Jason is in Friday the 13th, I don't know if he's any match for this Cangacero guy. Following Cangacero's plan, Jimmy lures Bruno to the town's old water tank after dark. The old water tower in town looms large against a moonlit night. Its once silver tank with the town's name on it has now been covered over by graffiti, but remains a popular place for kids to gather, party, and make scary videos. Jimmy, dressed in a long raincoat, stands close to the base of the tower looking around for his match this night, the one and only Bruno, the bully curse of Jimmy's life. At long last, Bruno shows up on his bike and drops it on the ground near Jimmy. He's not armed except for a set of brass knuckles that he pulls out of his pocket. "I got something special for you, chicken fritter. My dad gave me these. He used to use them all the time when he was an enforcer for the mob. I hope you have a dental insurance plan because you are gonna need it." Jimmy looks down at the brass knuckles, then looks back at Bruno with a look of fear that he can't hide. Bruno, look, I've been thinking, do you think maybe we could just talk about this?" "Ha! Are you kidding?" Bruno laughs. "You're the one who got me out here." I know, Jimmy quivers, but I changed my mind." Bruno raises his fists with the brass knuckles showing. "Get him up, loser, because I just can't wait to smash your face in." Jimmy suddenly loses it as he's overcome with fear. "No," he screams. You're right. I'm chicken. I'm scared. Please, don't hurt me." "Get them up," Bruno commands again. "Get your hands up or I'll put a dent in your head right now." Jimmy screams, turns, and runs. No, I can't." Jimmy runs to the base of the water tower and jumps on an extension ladder that leads up to the water tower's main ladder. Bruno runs after him, but just as he gets to the ladder, Jimmy grabs onto the water tower and kicks the ladder out from underneath him. Bruno has to dive out of the way. Before he can pull himself together, Jimmy disappears towards the top of the tower. "Get back down here, you sissy!" Bruno yells, but it's too late. He can't see Jimmy anymore. Jimmy reaches the top of the platform that surrounds the water tank and runs to the back, out of view from Bruno below. "Okay, give me the coat," Robbie says from the far side of the platform, where he has one arm around a young male mannequin. Jimmy rips off his raincoat, and together they wrap it around the dummy. Robbie admires how good it looks, and then he looks back at Jimmy. He says, "You ready?" Jimmy looks back toward where Bruno is. They can see him below, still looking up at the tower. Jimmy then turns back to Robbie and nods his head as if to say yes. Robbie lifts the mannequin up to the rail and prepares to throw it off the platform and let it fall to the ground. At the same time, Jimmy cups his hands around his mouth to make sure he can be heard yelling, "You're right, Bruno. I'm a coward, a sissy. I have no courage. I don't even deserve to live." And with that, Robbie throws the mannequin over. It plummets towards the ground, hitting a few metal girders on the way down. Bruno stands near the tower, watching in horror as the mannequin hits the ground with a heavy thud. "No! Bruno yells as a horrific scene unfolds in front of him. His bravado melts as a wave of fear overcomes him. But instead of running towards the body, he picks up his bike and rides off in the opposite direction as fast as he can. From the top of the tower, Jimmy and Robbie can't help but to smile a little. Robbie produces a flashlight from his pocket and blinks it while pointing it towards the street where Bruno is headed. Standing behind a tree near the street is Cangacero. He sees the light, then peeks around the tree to see Bruno coming at him. As the boy passes, Cangacero thrusts a tree branch into him and knocks him off his bike. Then, within the blink of an eye, Cangacero transforms himself into a ghostly figure that resembles the raincoat-clad Jimmy and floats into the air above Bruno. Bruno, you killed me, the ghost says in a voice like Jimmy's. No, Bruno screams. He grabs for his bike and tries to make a run for it, but the ghostly figure stays with him, flying almost in circles around him. You are going to go to hell for this, Bruno. You are going to burn in everlasting damnation and excruciating pain. No, it's not my fault, Bruno yells and rides his bike wildly. He steers onto a street with some fast-moving traffic. Cars honk and swerve out of the way. The devil knows what you did and is making a special space just for you in the deepest, hottest places of the netherworld. Get away from me! I didn't do anything! Bruno yells as he looks over his shoulder. When he turns back, a big rig truck is coming right at him. Bruno swerves out of the way on a bridge just at the last second, but then crashes into the guardrail. Bruno flies over the rail and down into a dirty-looking river below. A half hour later, emergency medical people and police are all near the riverbank as Bruno is moved by gurney into a waiting ambulance.
Vitals are stable,
An EMT says into a microphone at the back of the vehicle.
no signs of any serious injury, but the patient does appear to be in a state of complete psychological breakdown. We may have possible drug use, so requesting a psych ward doctor present in ER to examine on arrival. Over. Roger that!
A voice replies through a nearby speaker. And with that, the doors close and the ambulance disappears into the night. A few days later, Jimmy and Robbie are coming out onto the playground in their usual manner. Jimmy is bouncing the basketball and happy to see Bruno is nowhere to be seen. Hey boys, everything okay today? The boys look over to see Cangacero looking at them with an evil smile on his face. Yeah, I guess so, Jimmy says a little apprehensively. Robbie, on the other hand, seems to be more friendly towards Cangacero. You the dude, man. Cangacero smiles and says, well, not exactly the dude, but I know what you mean. Bruno's being held in the psych ward for 60 days for observation. I don't think he'll bother you guys anymore. Robbie then suddenly gets a more serious look on his face. He says, are you going to be staying around for a while? Because, you know, there might be some other problems you could help us with. Cangacero smiles at the boys with menace. I'm glad you brought that up, you know, because now it's my turn to ask you for a favor. Jimmy suddenly gets a stunned look on his face. A favor for you? Yeah, they didn't explain that to you? I do a favor for you, and then you do a favor for me. That's how it works when you play on my playground, get it? The boys look at each other as a big black cloud suddenly covers the sun. Cangacero lets out another evil laugh that never seems to end. Like I said, monsters come and monsters go. But tonight's tale is about that monster who is always there, or at least not far away. He's the one you should never ask a favor from if you value your soul. Thanks for joining me on this year's Billoween. I hope you liked the story, and if you did, hit that share button and share it with your friends and your family or whoever. And don't be afraid to hit the like button up or down so I get a good idea of whether I'm on the track for what you guys like. I'd also love to hear your comments about the story down in the comment section. So have a good time, and I'll see you soon.